All right, everyone. So welcome back to Veterans for Cannabis. As always, I'm Jared Kemble, and with me, my big brother, Big C. How you doing, Carlos? How you doing, brother?
Yo, my people. Man, how am I doing? Today's been a day. I've been having, I think I have an ulcer again. So I've been like very drained in energy, and I'm drinking ginger ale. But I do have to say one thing real quick, right? I eat right before I eat, and it feels like my nausea goes away when I eat. And I know a lot of cancer patients, they do use cannabis for nausea and pain, right? I can attest, I'm not a cancer patient, but I do have, intestinal issues, right? You know, with gallbladder and a bunch of other stuff. And I can tell you, cannabis does help me eat. Not always maintain stuff, but at least eat, right? So yeah, I'm doing all right. Living life. I'm blessed.
It's always good to be back, my brother. Always good
Mhm.
to be back. All right, so let's jump into this. So last week, Carlos and I started with a pretty simple question. How much cannabis is too much? But I think by the end of that conversation, I don't think either of us believed there was a simple answer. We talked about grams, talked about dependency, we talked about addiction, we talked about whether we're still functioning, paying bills, taking care of family, and handling our responsibilities. But Carlos did something important. He told this story. He explained what came before cannabis: combat PTSD, alcohol, medications, sleepless nights, and eventually finding something that he believes gave him some peace. That progression is straight out of Carlos' discussion last week. And I told you guys last week that today I was going to tell some of my own story. Because maybe you can't really answer how much is too much until you understand why somebody's using it in the first place. Before cannabis, what was I trying to quiet? What was I trying to escape? What did alcohol ever do for me? What did medications do? And what changed when cannabis entered my life? Because there is a difference between asking me, Jared, how many grams do I smoke, and asking Jared what happened in the life that made you reach for cannabis in the first place. So today, we're going there. This isn't telling veterans they should use cannabis. It's telling the truth about why some of us do, and then ask whether cannabis is controlling our lives or helping
Mhm.
us regain control of them. So Carlos, my brother, last week told your story. So today, I'm going to tell a little bit of mine. So here I go. All right. So let's take it's a little bit of a story time. So in 2001, I graduated high school. And not too long after my graduation, I went to Fort Benning, Georgia. But I came into the Army as a '09 Bravo. I don't even know if that MOS is still around or not, but it was known as a trainee. And I did basic at Fort Benning, Georgia. And then during basic training, I was given the MOS 77 Foxtrot before it changed to 92 Fox, to a 92 series. So the Army chose my MOS halfway through basic. That's how I became a fueler. And then my first duty station became Korea. And I was stationed in Yongseong with the 501st Military Intelligence Battalion. So I worked kind of in a small motor pool, and I didn't really do my job, my fueling a whole lot. I probably worked on Humvees and things like that more. But Korea is where everything changed. I started drinking in Korea. And not only would I would say I was just drinking, there was the point where I was showing up to formation drunk, PT drunk, even probably driving some of my officers around drunk at some point, doing some duties. They probably had no idea. Did a lot of dumb stuff when I was in Korea. And that was from 2001. From 2003, I spent a few years in Korea, rotated back to the States, and I actually got out of the military for that little bit of time. And I was going to try to do the whole college thing. Well, I ended up joining the National Guard. Well, then Iraq, then they got orders to Iraq. And 2004, did some training with the Texas National Guard. And then we did 10 months in Iraq. In 2005, we came home on December 15th, 2005. I only did one tour in Iraq. You know, I know a lot of you out there has probably done multiple. I done one. It was about 10 months long. And I saw enough in that deployment. I'll just leave it brief. Yeah. But coming home, I think, was a struggle for me because I didn't really understand how to live life when I came home from Iraq. I felt overwhelmed at times, always easily frustrated. I mean, I could just be in the gym and just drop the weight at my feet and just get so pissed off. I mean, I remember every little thing would set me off. I mean, and drinking was the one thing that I thought was masking everything, if that makes sense, or I thought it was. But it wasn't. And my drinking actually got exposed. And this brings me into Fort Lee. because after coming home from Iraq, I left the National Guard and decided to go back active duty, which brings me to Fort Lee. And that's where my drinking got exposed, was at Fort Lee. That's when I think what I was hiding finally came to light. Like the Bible says, eventually everything in the dark comes to light, right? So my drinking came to light at Fort Lee, big time. I remember nights driving drunk to and on base all the time. And but fast forward now. All right, let's fast forward. So drinking played a huge role in my life, and it was going nowhere. Then, about 2009, after I medically retired in 2008 from the Army, going to the VA I found myself in another struggle. Right, it felt like fighting the war all over again, but with bureaucracy. Right, with a healthcare system. I started taking lots of medication at the time. I don't even recall most of the medications I was on, but I never felt like me the whole time I was on those medications. And they started causing more and more problems. And then by 2016, I had an altercation with a police officer in Texas. When we were living in Texas, Heather was pulled over for speeding on a back road as we were going to a VA appointment. And we were late for that appointment. And we got pulled over. And it was something about the way the officer was talking to Heather, and it set me off. And we ended up getting into an altercation. And then from that moment, I was then sent to the Waco, Texas VA for an inpatient treatment program. It was 10 weeks for PTSD. And once again, my drinking and all that was exposed again, and then at some point after the PTSD program, I thought I was doing okay again, but no, I wasn't doing all right. The medications I were on weren't helping, and I was starting to slip again. And then the breakthrough came when we moved to Oregon in 2018. That's when the breakthrough happened. We moved to Oregon. Cannabis is legal, and it took me to 2019 when I finally started using cannabis here in Oregon. I end up go. Here's an interesting story, and I'm just going to say this because my faith is a whole part of my journey, so I don't want to leave out my faith. But I will say this: on December 15th, right? So on December 15th, 2019, not only was Heather's and I marriage finally blessed in the church, but I was chrismated in the Orthodox Church, St. George Greek Orthodox Church in Eugene, Oregon. I was chrismated, and from that moment forward, when I walked out of that church, something told me, something in my heart said that I was forgiven and I had the real work to do. And then from that moment forward, I walked into a cannabis shop, started using cannabis. I got off all my VA meds. I'm not on any VA medication at all. I simply just use cannabis. I use other herbs and natural things to help with blood pressure. You know, I'm no longer on any blood pressure medicine. Actually, my doctor told me I didn't have to take my blood pressure medicine anymore from my last visit. So my blood pressure's down. So in a way, that's kind of my story, but quickly. But I just go ahead and we're just gonna bring this back now. But all right, Carlos, thank you, everyone. Yeah.
Yeah, the what I have found, okay, is that more veteran than none got similar stories, especially getting out. I also have found that a responsible, happy medium, like for me, right? I take mental health medication, right? Not as much as I used to take, but I take enough. And I can tell the difference when I'm not, again, dependency is real, right? But dependency, for we have a lot of mental disbalance due to, not only the trauma but also the lifestyle of being in the military. We got out, things are gonna be disbalanced, right? But what I have found, a responsible medium between medication, diet, and cannabis has worked for me the best, to be honest with you, right? And it could be the routine. It could be, it could be the argument that I'm dependent on a specific behavior or weed or pills. But I can say honestly, I do not abuse neither the cannabis, alcohol, or any medication I'm on. I'm actually being healthy. What can I attribute to that? I don't know. I don't know. I just got here. It's like kind of like God guide me to a place, like kind of center, where I'm happy, right? But I still have a lot of work to do, right? And it's always going to be a battle. But I think again, cannabis is a big part of my life. In fact, tomorrow I'm going to go to a cannibal festival in Wisconsin, and it's going to be fun, but I found, a passion for cannabis, my passions for the science. But I also enjoy the smoke and getting a little bit. I get very artistic in a sense, So I enjoy that, and then to eat, deal with my ulcers, my intestinal, issues. Cannabis does help me eat. I do have medication for my stomach that I take, but in comparison to what I was taking, it's not a comparison. It's like cut in a third amount of pills. So I mean, it sounds like you are in the same boat that I am. Why? How about I was very angry. You know what I mean? I was a very angry person, and now I'm very hippie alike. I just want to love everything and everybody. My wife can tell when I'm aggravated. There's two possibilities: A, I do not feel good, or B, I forgot to take my meds, which is more than none, right? So she asked one of her first question is, "Hey, have you taken your meds today?" If I say no, go take your meds. But that's just me. And I don't know how are you on a daily basis?
you know, I guess for me on a day to day basis, I do pretty good. I mean, I think our stories are a lot alike because I'm like you. I enjoy cannabis. I love sitting on my porch or in my garage. Enjoying the smoke. Talking to neighbors as they walk by. And a lot of my neighbors love it. I mean, it's Oregon, so cannabis can bring people together too. So I have an older man that lives down the road, and we sometimes enjoy it together. So,
Well, it's the same thing with alcohol, right? Alcohol, that is what I'm gonna tell you this much, okay? Alcohol is not a bad thing. Okay,
mhm,
it's bad when you use too much. Too
right.
much of everything is bad, right? But alcohol through man, hundreds of years have been bringing people together. Whether it's in church, drinking the wine, whether it is in a bar, in a funeral, alcohol brings people together. Same argument can be said, with cannabis. I sit down with I got a couple of friends, sometime I go to their house and I sit down with them and, the conversations get so deep. We talk about family. It's like they bring us together. So you brought a good point, it can bring people together. It could. But again, that's when smoking responsible comes in, right? I think when people overdo things, and they become very like that, they have to have it, right? I don't have to have it. I just my mood get kind of funny if I was smoking money, right? But I just do my thing, right? But I have known people that get shakes. And I'm talking about alcohol specifically, not much on weed. I haven't seen really people overdose, like having withdrawals, and I never seen that. But I have seen alcohol. I have seen it in even cigarettes, right? So, too much of anything's not good. People got to be responsible, with everything, and they got to understand that, yeah, that's just my 2 cents right there, yeah. Otherwise, man, let me ask you a question, man. What do you prefer, indica or sativa, and why?
Me,
Yeah.
you know, that's a good question because I enjoy all three. I
Mhm.
like indica, I like hybrid, and there are some sativas I do like. It depends on the terps, but I do prefer mostly indica hybrid. So,
Yeah,
but strongly indica. But
yeah, I'm an indica guy. I'm like strong indica, and it's funny. It doesn't get me sleepy or nothing. They call indica in the couch. Um, it has to be something special. I remember I was in my cousin's house. I went to the dispensary, and you know, we got supplied, excuse me. And there was this white bud. There were white buds. My cousin goes like, man, we gotta get some of this. This is good stuff. So we got it, we put flour in there, then we take this white bud and you put a little bit on top, you know. And this is I forgot what it's, but it's a bud and it's white. It looked like snow, right? Let me
mhm.
tell you, man, I hit the bong very comfortably. I got my little puff and my legs stopped working. I got so stoned I have to like lay back. for like 5 minutes just to come back. Okay, my legs are not working. I mean, get it was fun. It was fun. But
Mhm.
point being, I'm an indica guy, but a typical indica doesn't do me. I'm a very hyper person too. So, I need to slow down.
Well, here's a strain for everybody. There's a strain called Sirius Black, and the buds are black, and it runs anywhere from 20 to 30% THC, and it's
Uh-huh.
really good for pain.
I'm gonna tell
It's an
you,
indica.
I like the purple strain. Purple Urkel and purple haze. I'm a huge fan of, especially if the bud is purple, you sold me. So I like the purple strains. I don't know why. I like the taste. They do good for pain too, for me. But yeah, I'm gonna try to find it. I'm gonna share it next. There is like a chart that talks about the strength and what is good for,
Mhm.
right? I'm gonna find it hopefully by next week. But
I'll put it on the screen for those watching. I have a picture, so for those watching it, you'll see it on your screen. I'll put a
oh,
picture of what it looks like.
okay, so you know what I'm talking about. Okay, so and there's a lot of books. There's and now, man, the studies are going like insane. Cannabis, studies actually, federally funded studies are gonna boom. And I think I think pharmaceuticals are gonna go under just like alcohol. Okay, not
Right.
completely under, but under what it was historically. I mean, alcohol is there already. There's more people drinking. There's more people smoking on a daily basis than drinking alcohol. I call it a generational shift. So I think that's what we have. We are in the middle of a generational shift. I think cannabis, weed is going to it's going to run with it. I also want to say one thing. First time in 4 years, fentanyl's deaths are low, like are super low. I mean, compared to the last, 4 years prior. And I saw that, reading the other day where, the death percentage are low in compare, right? Like, so that's a good thing, right? So, and I'm saying this, I want everybody to be aware, if you buy weed from the street, I highly encourage you to get a testing strip and test it before you smoke it. Because people been putting fentanyl and a bunch of other bullshit into it. So be careful with that. I personally recommend, if you're in a state where they have a dispensary, find a clean dispensary, go there, right? If you're not in a state, I tell you test your weed, right? This actually, I went to the VA and I seen a Narcan and a fentanyl vendor machine where, you go in there, you press, I want, Narcan, I want testing strips, and they give it to you. So I know the VA has that, and I know Oregon, do they give you guys free Narcan,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yes,
How about the testing strips? Because I know some Colorado give testing strips, so you can
I'm
buy
pretty
them.
sure. Yeah, yeah. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure too. Yeah,
So like everything, you got to be careful. If you want something healthy in your body, you got to know where it's coming from. I'm going to be honest. I hope and I pray that legalizes so I can grow my own stuff, and that's my hope, right? How we doing on time?
we're at 24.
Okay, I think it's a
Little.
good time to yeah. So, okay, guys, like we say typically, and I say everybody every day, be a responsible human being. We all do what we need to do, but if you get caught, own it like a big boy, right? And a big girl. Be responsible, be safe, don't do nothing. Don't do nothing that's gonna take money away from your family, right? That's what I would say, Jared.
Yeah, everyone. Yeah, everyone. I just wanted to thank all of our followers on all of our platforms, to all of our listeners. Thank you so much. Your support means a lot to us both, to what we're doing and what we're trying to accomplish. So thank you all. If I haven't responded to some of your comments, whatever, I'll try to get to them, especially on TikTok. I know there was a lot. So if I haven't, please be patient. I will respond when I can. And like Carlos said, everyone just be safe, right? Be safe, be responsible, and so we can see everyone back, our listeners again next week. Carlos, that's all I got, brother.
I need to go TikTok. I still don't got it. So I need to sign up for this. So everybody have a great day. Jared, peace, man. Much love.
You too, brother. You too, man. My prayers are with you, brother. All
All right.
right.
Thank you, brother. Peace.
All right. Out, man.